the Palestinian society. So the Israeli society has hundreds of mosques, freedom of religion. You actually have a Muslim party which are closer to the Muslim Brotherhood than to, say, some of the more moderate streams of Islam in the UK. In government, in a coalition in the Israeli government, you have nearly 2 million Muslims that live as Israeli citizens with full equality. They perform just as well as the Jews, often better than the Jews, in education and various other fields within Israeli society. Now we look at Palestinian society. There is not one Jew. Why is there not one Jew in Palestinian society? Because the Jews were ethnically cleansed in the 30s and 40s from the areas that now are controlled by the Palestinian Authority. Jordan and Egypt ethnically cleansed the Jews from that region, and they believed they were fighting a jihad. That's the language their leaders used. Whether it was Hashim al-Husseini, whether it was the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the ulama in Al-Hazar, they all used the language of jihad.
You're making a lot of points.
I'll wrap it all up.
You made about 15 points.
And I'll bring it all up to 1 point. And I'll bring it all to 1 point.
No, how can you bring them all to 1 point?
Because it's all what it is all.
If I haven't responded, because I need to dismantle each and every single point.
You can dismantle them all. The point I'm saying all of this for is we need to look at Palestinian society today and Israeli society. The synagogues were blown up by the Jordanians. The Jews were ethnically cleansed from the Jordanians in 1948 and 49.
No, let him finish.
The Jews were ethnically cleansed from Gaza by the Egyptians, yeah? Hashim al-Husseini declared Muslims, I declare jihad, slaughter the Jews, slaughter them all.
Okay.
In contrast, and this is my closing point, in contrast, Israel, 20% of its population are Muslim, they have complete equality with the Jews, they have freedom of religion, freedom of political representation. Today, that's the reality.
Okay, good.
Under Palestinians,
okay. Now, let me do a comparison between what Israel is doing today and what the Muslims did for 1,300 years. That's why I want everyone to go into history and understand the realities, the two realities you talked about. Firstly, let me quickly highlight your point that people always look at the history with a very sympathetic lens. Yeah, no problem. I agree with you. But when we look at impartial historians, or partially impartial historians, like Karen Armstrong, let's say. Karen Armstrong has written a book on the history of Jerusalem. In that very book, she states categorically that Muslims brought a system which allowed the three Abrahamic faiths to coexist for the first time in history. That's what she's saying. She's not a Muslim, as far as I know. And she's not a Jew, as far as I know, although she was teaching at a rabbinical school. And this has been, by the way, said by many Jewish historians as well.
Which rabbinical school was she teaching at?
She was teaching. I mean, I read her profile. She was teaching at. History of Jerusalem. Okay.
I am Muhammad, about Muhammad.
Oh yeah. That's a different book. That's a different book. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if she is Jewish or not. I don't know what. She's not. She was a nun. Yeah. She was a nun. But she was teaching at a rabbinical school.
I don't know that.
Okay, check her profile.
Schools, you usually only have male teachers, so it sounds a bit.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, it sounds. Yeah, I agree. But I read that in her profile.
Like she maybe gave a lecture there or something, but it's not common. They're very segregated. Jewish rabbinical schools.
So even if I'm wrong on that, no problem. But my point still stands. My point stands that she can be seen as an impartial historian, and that's what she had to say about the Muslim period in particular. Now, to your comparison between Israel, the state of Israel, and the Palestinians, why don't we do a larger comparison? The Muslim civilization before the creation of Israel, and what happened after the state of Israel came to power. Now, let me do a breakdown. You're saying there are 2 million Arabs or Muslims living within Israel, and they are treated as equal citizens, and all of that. But on the other hand, the Palestinians are severely brutalized, who are also Arabs and Muslims. So the Palestinians are receiving a different treatment, and the ones living within the state are receiving another treatment. Now, imagine throughout the Muslim civilization, for 1,300 years, the Jews of Spain flourished, produced the best scholars, poets, theologians, philosophers, you name it. The best scholars ever produced in Jewish history were produced during the Islamic period in Spain. Okay, The Jewish historians will confirm that. Now imagine if the Muslims kept those Jewish people nicely pampered and all of that, just like you are claiming the Arabs are pampered, okay, in Israel.
Word,
I mean,
yeah,
I'm using that word. I like to go a step further. And then the Muslims start brutalizing the rest of the Jewish people in the world, because the Muslims ruled land from Spain to China. The largest population of the Jewish people was in the Muslim lands, confirmed by Jewish historians. Okay, a Jewish historian called Lesner. Okay, he's a well-established historian in the U.S. He has written a book recently on interactions between the Jewish people and the Muslim people. Okay, Jacob Lasner. Jacob Lasner is his name, and he says the same thing. The majority of the Jewish people lived under the domain of Islam. Okay, for over 1,000 years. So imagine if the Muslims are taking care of the Jewish people in Spain and they start to brutalize the rest, which they did not, right? This is exactly, unfortunately, is what's happening in Palestine today. You're saying the Arabs within the state of Israel are pampered, or they are taken care of, or they live as equal citizens. Yeah, they have equality. While the Arabs on the other side of the border, okay, undefined border.
They cannot even come to hospital.
They can't go to toilet. They can't even. I'm sorry to say, they can't even. Yeah. So there is no comparison.
Okay.
So the Islamic case still stands strong.
Yeah. There is another thing as well. When the Jews start coming from Europe, from different places of Europe, and they start coming as a reaction to what happened to them with the Nazis.
Yeah.
What happened to them? What they have started.
Look, we don't condone. We don't condone any of that. That what happened during the conflict, whether it was caused by the Zionists or whether it was caused by the Arabs, whoever caused. We don't condone any of that, because atrocities were committed.
Of course.
Okay, and there is a cause. The cause was political.
The cause was political. But when they started, you see these those who were the militias of Haganah and those ones who literally wiped villages, like literally cleansed villages, killed every single person. So the natural thing from what happened from the Arabs, which is wrong again, that they start as well do the same thing. It was a kind of
no. It's not wrong to defend yourself.
Yeah.
It's not wrong to defend yourself.
Defending.
If people,
he claims if it happened, and I doubt most of these things they said, okay, those synagogues that you mentioned, they were blown up by the Jordanians. Let's say, at the end of the day, I'm Jordanian myself. Yeah.
Jordanian Palestinian or
no,
Jordanian?
I'm Jordanian. Yeah. So I'm Jordanian. I myself am Jordanian, and in Jordan, we still have all these churches that
synagogues
used to be there. So my question is, why the Muslims, as you say in the name, listen, why the Muslims in the name of jihad, they didn't blow up all these churches? Okay. Why they didn't do this?
So
why they targeted some synagogues according to what you say, and I doubt that this happened.
We don't know if that's true.
I don't know if that's true.
The entire old city, when they conquered the old city, all the synagogues were destroyed. The Chuva and various, they're being rebuilt now.
But this is a good question. Yeah. Why did the Jewish people started to leave from Morocco to India, and they started to travel? They started to travel towards the state of Israel. Why? What happened to the Jewish people suddenly, having lived in these lands for over 1,000 years? Suddenly, in the 1940s and 30s, they are now leaving these lands en masse and traveling to Palestine. What happened?
Perfect. So there's 5 points I'm going to address, which you've gone over all of them. I had to keep notes.
No, one by one.
Exactly, one by one. So we started with the golden age of Spain, and he rightfully pointed out, and he's a knowledgeable brother. They both are knowledgeable brothers, and they pointed out that in Al-Andalus, the Jews flourished. One of my favourite rabbis, so the rabbi I follow the closest, Maimonides.
Yeah.
He came from a family in Al-Andalus. And it's very interesting because you can follow what happened to people like Rambam to understand what happened to the Jews who were living under Islam, because it's the perfect example. So you have different khulafa, you have different caliphates throughout time. And some of them are good to their Muslim subjects and bad to their Muslim subjects. And some of them are good to their Jewish subjects and bad to their Jewish subjects. So under what what some scholars will describe as the golden age of Judaism, or certainly of Islam, and they call it that. They sometimes call it the golden age of Judaism. It wasn't a golden age of ours. It was maybe Moses or the Talmudic periods, the Mishnaic periods. But that aside, the Jews flourished in Al-Andalus. And just to really reinforce that, you had a Jewish general who led the Muslims over the Mediterranean from North Africa into Al-Andalus, and it helped the Muslims to conquer. You had Jewish physicians. Jews reached soaring heights in Al-Andalus. But what happened next? The Almohads conquered.
When did Almohads come?
I don't know the exact date.
12th century.
12th century.
12th century.
What did they do to the Jews?
So what happened between...
I listened to
what
both.
happened between...
Adnan, I listened to both of you respectfully. Please do the same.
Sure.
So, following Al-Andalus, the Almohads slaughtered hundreds of thousands of Jews.
Hundreds of thousands?
Yes. I'll bring you sources. I'll bring you sources.
No problem.
They threatened the Jews, you either convert to Islam, which you can't do in Islam, but they did. You leave or we kill you. And so you had Rambam left from one Islamic caliphate and went to another, and he then became the physician for Salahuddin in Fustat in Egypt.
So Muslims gave him refuge for Muslims.
Yes. That's my point.
That's a virtue for us.
No, that's my point.
Yes.
That's my point.
Yeah.
They're a good caliphate that have been very good for the Jews, and there have been other this bad. The Ottomans is an example. The Ottomans at times were good for the Jews, but coming back to Hebron, in 1517, the Ottomans came into Hebron and they massacred the Jewish community 1517, 1517.
But they were destroyed by 1517.
Let him finish.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
And now I've just got to go back to my things so I don't miss them. So all I wanted to do was agree with you that there have been caliphates that have been very good for the Jews and some caliphates not so great for the Jews.
Okay, let me respond to that very quickly before we move on.
No, because you went through 5 points and then you can respond to each of my
That's
votes.
too much, you know.
No, I know. No. I listened to all five of your points. Make a note of it. I made a note on my phone so I didn't miss them.
No problem.
So you then talk about...
Remind me of your points.
I've got them on camera, on my phone. The next one you talked about was the difference in laws, and I agree with you. There are differences of how Israelis treat Arabs that live in Israel to Arabs that live in, say, Gaza or the West Bank. And that's because we're in conflict with Gaza, and less so with the West Bank, but certainly in Gaza.
So it's justified.
It's not justified, it's war.
It's justified.
No, you're putting words in my mouth. I've never said anything.
There's no war. There's no war.
So I've lost people to that war, Adnan. You may have lost friends. I've lost friends to this war.
No, there's no war.
So when someone fires 4,000
war is between two rivals. Where's the second rival?
Adnan. I let you speak.
Yeah.
If you dissent, if you have a difference of opinion,
I will speak in my time.
Yeah.
Sure.
So when it comes to the laws, many of my friends who are settlers are advocating for what both of you are saying. They're saying that the Arabs who live in the West Bank, they call it Judea and Samaria, we call it Judea and Samaria, Yehuda v'Shomron. Arabs who live in this region should be given Israeli citizenship. They should have the exact same laws as Israeli Arabs, Israeli Jews. There should be one law for everyone. Some Palestinians say the same. There's a company called the Palestinian Center for Policy and Research, and they survey Palestinians. They're based in Ramallah, they're associated with the PLO. They research and they ask the Palestinians between the ages of 18 and 25, would you rather live under the Palestinian Authority, under Abu Mazen, or under Israel? The majority of them, I don't know the exact number, said they'd rather live under Israel because Israel throws its politicians in jail. And so there are Palestinians and Israeli settlers and Israelis who say what you want. They want Arabs in Israel, in the West Bank, to be Israeli citizens and have the exact same law applied to them. Those that support the two-state solution, which is where the situation we're in at the moment, say, hang on a minute, if the Palestinians want their own state, then they can't be under Israeli law because that would mean Israel would be sovereign over there. Therefore, they have to be under, as long as Israel's in there, military law. And so I think there's a compelling argument for both. If you support Palestinian statehood alongside Israel, then there's an argument that the Palestinians should be under the Palestinian Authority and not under Israel. Then I'll quickly come through the final points. You mentioned, actually, so you went to the Haganah. We'll go to the Haganah. Synagogue standing and the Haganah, I think so they're kind of tied together. So in 1947, let's actually fast forward. When did all the conflicts start? Where between the Jews and the Arabs in that region? Because that's really what we're getting at here. The Nabi Musa riots in 1921, later riots in 1929, which led to the massacre of the Jewish community in Hebron again, which led to massacres of Jews in Jaffa, Jerusalem, Haifa. The first shots were always fired by, unfortunately, our Palestinian cousins. In the 1947 civil war, it started when Arabs attacked 2 Jewish buses just outside Tel Aviv. 1948, when Israel declared independence, 5 Arab armies, including Jordan, 5 Arab armies, including Jordan, 2 minutes, 5 Arab armies, including, yes, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right. They can respond, if they disagree, they will respond. And 5 Arab armies, including Jordan. Yeah, of course I'm giving an essay. You both gave an essay, I'm giving a response.
No, I want him to finish, no problem. Then we will give an essay, no problem.
It's good, we can all give our essays. Jordan, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon kind of, Iraq, they all invaded Israel in 1948. Invaded Israel, yeah. Invaded. Jordan crossed over the Jordan River. Conquered all of the land. Jordan actually I have more respect for than the other Arab armies. When Jordan conquered the West Bank, and they renamed Judea and Samaria the West Bank when they did that, what they did when certain Arab militias conquered Jewish villages, they massacred the Jews. The Jordanians even shot Arabs who were trying to massacre Jews. Other times you had Jordanian militiamen who were screaming how do you say slaughter the Jews? Idab al-Yahud? Screaming that, but the legion and those in charge actually went to great lengths many times to avoid massacres.
You made your point.
Just to make, and I'll finish with this point. Had the Arabs, Palestinians, Jordanians, Syrians, Lebanese, anyone that was involved in the conflict, at any time, had they agreed to share the land with the Jews and live side by side, 2 states, there'd be not one refugee. There would be
Remind me of this point.
There would be not one refugee. We'd have peace. You'd probably have a Palestine that could look like Singapore. Instead, we don't have that.
Okay, I will. Okay,
fine,
thank you very much. I will start with the last point. Had the Palestinians and the Arabs allowed the Jewish people to coexist, all of this wouldn't have happened. What happened for 1,300 years before the State of Israel was created? Where were the Jewish people living? They were living with the Muslims for over 1,000 years. They were not massacred. Okay, you gave a couple of examples and I'll give you more examples. By the way, you gave one example. I'll give you an actual example when a pogrom took place and the Jewish people were slaughtered in Spain, in Granada in 1066. In 1066, this happened in Granada. Okay, and that was an exception. And who was condemning that at that time during the Middle Ages in medieval period? Who was condemning that behavior? The Muslims. The Muslim scholars, the ulama. They said, never can you do this. Any political events, any political incidents or political circumstances that caused incidents like this, they were condemned and they were thoroughly refuted and things went back to normal soon after. For example, he gave an example of Al-Muhd, Al-Muwahidun. They came into Spain from North Africa, from current-day Morocco, and they removed the Al-Murabitun or Al-Muravids from power. Okay? And Al-Muwahidun were a very strict, harsh, battle-hardened, even I would say extremist Muslims, right? Like we had recent examples like ISIS. Although I wouldn't equate them with ISIS. ISIS is another league altogether. When it comes to atrocities and brutality and terrorism, ISIS is a completely different league, right? But Al-Muwahidun were very, very harsh on the Jewish people, no doubt. But this was a temporary. This was and Muslims as well. Absolutely, thank you. And Muslims, Al-Muwahidun not only brutalized the Jewish people, they brutalized the Muslim people also. So just to say,
they cleanse Al-Murabitun from Andalusia. Literally.
Thank you.
Every single
so the previous dynasty was completely wiped out. Muslim dynasty by the Almohads, and because the Jewish people had high positions in Spain at the time, okay, Al-Muwahidun blamed the Jewish people for some of the problems and they said, okay, you need to go or you need to convert to Islam and all that. But then who condemned that behavior? Guess who? Not the Jewish rabbis or the Christian priests. No.
Of course they condemned it.
No, no. Let me finish now. You did your essay. Let me do my essay now. Let me do my footnotes to your essay. Yeah. Wait. Let me add footnotes to his essay.
I have my
the Hawashi. Okay. So he mentioned one person in particular, Maimonides. Maimonides was forcefully converted by Almohads, an extremist group. Maimonides leaves Spain. He leaves Spain. Where does he go? He doesn't go to the Jewish state of Israel. There was none, right? He doesn't go to the Christian lands in the north, to northern Europe. He makes his way to Egypt, which was governed by the Ayyubids at the time. Sultan Salahuddin was alive at the time, and Maimonides became a private personal physician of the brother of the Sultan. His name was Malik al-Afdal. So Maimonides, from a high position in Spain, left Spain and came to Egypt and continued in a high position. And then he was accused of apostasy in Egypt. Guess what? Not many Jewish people know this, and not many Jewish people talk about this. He was accused of apostasy because he had allegedly converted to Islam in Spain, and when he came to Egypt, he apostatized because he was a practicing Jew. So he was taken to court, to a Muslim court, trialed for apostasy. Who rescues him? Who rescues him? Muslims, Muslim scholars. They come and testify because his conversion was forcefully imposed on him. He was forcefully converted. Therefore, his conversion was not valid. He cannot be trialed for apostasy. And Maimonides goes free, and he lived, quite prosperously in Egypt. So that's the response. So what Joseph did, instead of talking about the period between the 8th century and the 12th century, okay, how many centuries is that? How many centuries is that? 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and it was in the 12th century when things went wrong with Al-Muwahidun, and then Al-Muwahidun themselves became immersed into the Spanish culture, and things changed. Things went back to normal, and the Jewish people continued to live happily with the Muslims thereafter until 1492, when the Catholics took the last stronghold in Spain, which was Granada. And then what happens? Jewish people and the Muslim people banished, brutalized, killed, tortured, murdered, forcefully converted to Catholicism, right? So the point I'm making is, Joseph is picking on exceptional incidents that were condemned by the Muslims themselves before the Jewish people do it, right? And these were exceptional incidents. You cannot make them representative examples for the Muslim civilization. What you need to do is you need to look at the overwhelming reality of the period of that time, which was peaceful coexistence between the Jewish people and the Muslim people. Having said that, your second point was? Second point, we've got Palestinian laws, we've got Palestinian.